Hello everyone. Welcome to the curriculum preview for the second 6 weeks. I've had lots of conversations with principals, teachers, specialists about our first round of assessments. And from what I gather, most of us need to take a step back. So I'm going to share with you today not only the curriculum hotspots per the heat map, but we want to talk about the reading process. In order for students to make complex inferences about the structure and elements of any genre, they're going to have to read with understanding. We know that reading is thinking. So if we know that we have students in our classrooms that are 1, 2, 3 grade levels behind in reading, we must start with the reading process. Teach the reading processes deeply because that's going to be your major scaffold for students to be able to read text and know what to do when the text gets difficult. So let's begin. We know that reading is thinking. So students should always show their thinking through discussion with other students, discussions with their teacher, and in writing. Good readers have a purpose for reading. That's figure 19A, set a purpose for reading. When we are modeling text, we are to set a purpose for reading, and when students are reading, they set a purpose for their own reading. And then if we have them rereading text for different purposes proves to be a powerful way to get students to go back in and dig deeper and think more deeply about the text. We can have them reread to find text structure, we can have them reread to find literary devices, and those sorts of things. Good readers think about what they already know. That is, they use their background knowledge. Well, that's figure 19C, monitor and adjust comprehension using fix-up strategies, of which background knowledge is one. Good readers make sure they understand what they read. That's figure 19C, monitor and adjust comprehension. So they make sure they understand because they are actively using strategies. Good readers look at pictures when possible. That's using text structure. So that, again, figure 19C, monitoring and adjusting comprehension. Good readers predict what will happen next. Prediction is a type of inference, so that's figure 19D. Good readers form pictures in their minds. That is visualization, which is a fix-up strategy, which is figure 19C. Good readers draw conclusions about what they read. That is figure 19D, because drawing conclusions is a type of inference. Good readers try to figure out new words. That is, they have word attack skills, either contextual analysis or morphological analysis. So that is 3.2, 4.2, 5.2, 6.2 is the vocabulary to use context to figure out words. And then all good readers need practice. So if we have readers in our classroom that do not have strong command over these skills, then this is the starting point. Not with, let's just pull up our essays and begin teaching, because then we're not closing gaps and we're not addressing the student needs. For this curriculum preview, you will need your IFDs for Unit 2, you'll need your Content Builder document, and your PLC for the Reading PLC documents. Today we're going to review the heat map data to identify our hotspot for Unit 2A. We're going to analyze the IFD for essential standards for 2A. We're going to focus on the 4 essential questions that drive an effective PLC. We're going to dig deeply into questions 1 and 2. We're going to review assessments for learning and its effect on student achievement. You're going to design meaningful ways for students to demonstrate their learning of standards as a method of assessing their progress during the learning. And you're going to use the Content Builder and PLC for the Reading PLC documents to aid in planning. The 4 essential questions to focus on learning are: what do we expect all students to learn? How will we know if they learned it? How will we respond to students who don't learn? And how will we enrich those who do learn? Take a moment to look at the Grade 5 heat map by standard. Unit 2A is appreciating literary nonfiction and drama. For 2A, we're going to look at the knowledge and skill statement for literary nonfiction and the student expectation that goes along with it. Per the data shown on the heat map, we see that literary nonfiction was tested on the 2014 STAR. There's improvement needed in 5.7 Figure 19D. This is a tested supporting standard, so we're going to consider this as our hotspot. Let's look at the other process standards that were tested also. We see that Figure 19E should also be considered a hotspot as our process standard, and Figure 19F. Figure 19D reads, make inferences about text and use textual evidence. Just as I did with the first video, I've deconstructed the standard into the 3 C's of the standard. That is the cognitive expectations, the content, that is what we teach, and the level of specificity, that is the context in which we teach. Figure 19D requires students to make complex inferences about structural elements, literary elements, sensory and figurative language, and the purpose of the elements and language used in sections of text or specific sentences of text, and use text evidence to support their understanding. Inferencing is the reader's ability to expand and deepen understanding by using inference to go beyond the words on the page. An inference is when you take the important words and phrases from the text and turn them into thoughts. It's when readers get a feeling of something that's going on in the text that the author hasn't told the reader in words. An inference is information that you have to put together yourself from the text. It's where students spill their thinking onto the text. The reader takes in the words on the page and thinks deeply about them. Please pause the video at this time to answer and discuss these questions. What are your new understandings about Figure 19D? What types of practice and activities must we provide to students to make complex inferences? And how must we have students demonstrate their learning moving forward? Now let's deconstruct the standard for the knowledge and skill statement for literary nonfiction. For grade 3, please locate the knowledge and skill statement for literary nonfiction. That is at 3.9 on your IFD. For grade 4, please locate 4.7 as the knowledge and skill statement for literary nonfiction. And grade 5, please locate 5.7 on your IFD for the knowledge and skill statement. The knowledge and skill statement reads, students understand, make inferences, and draw conclusions about the varied structural patterns and features of literary nonfiction and provide evidence from text to support their understanding. Just as we did with the Figure 19 standard, let's deconstruct this standard. We see the different cognitive levels of thinking are understand, make inferences, and draw conclusions. We see our content that we're teaching is structural patterns and features of literary nonfiction. And lastly, we have our context, that is our complexity and specificity, our depth of knowledge that students need to make these complex inferences. We see that they need to make inferences related to the whole text, part of the text, the structure of literary nonfiction, and the features of literary nonfictions. And they need to be able to summarize literary nonfiction text in ways that maintain meaning and logical order. They also need to respond to literary nonfiction by providing evidence to support their understanding. Lastly, let's review our college and career readiness standards. Our college and career readiness standards help us to align our instruction with what students must be able to do post-secondary education. Students must be able to locate explicit textual information and draw complex inferences, analyze and evaluate the information within and across text of varying lengths. I have started a web for the varied structural patterns of literary nonfiction as a starting point for your mini lessons as they are combined with the reading process. While you teach each structural pattern, set a purpose for reading and allow students to demonstrate their learning through discussion, writing, and text annotation so that both you and the student can monitor their progress. Likewise, I've started a web for you for the features of literary nonfiction. Just as with the structural patterns, you're going to teach each facet and allow students to demonstrate their learning by providing time for purposeful practice, both collaboratively and independently, and provide support via small group guided reading, student conferences, and etc. in order to monitor their progress. Think about your reading process standards, figure 19, that I shared with you at the beginning of the video. Set purposes for reading so that students are actively engaged with the text and know what they are looking for in the text. Have them show their thinking through text annotation, graphic organizers, writing, so that you can monitor student progress on a daily basis, and students know what they need to do to get better. According to the standards we have studied, what do we want our students to learn? Take a moment to clearly answer question 1. This will be the student learning target statement. This statement addresses what students need to know and be able to do. Then collaborate about how you can make the learning relevant and rigorous for students. Before we attempt to answer question 2, let's take a moment to review the idea of assessment for learning. Assessment for learning is continuous. It's about informing students about themselves and their own progress. It tells what progress each student is making toward meeting each standard while the learning is happening, when there's still time to be helpful. And the effect on learning success is immediate and long-lasting. Assessment for learning helps us set clear learning targets and assessments, that is, checks for understanding, classroom assignments, tasks, and teacher-created exercises to really know if and at what level our students are learning. So our essential question number 2 is, how will we know the students learned? What evidence are we going to collect to know that they have learned? What classroom assessments will we use to assess the learning target? Please pause the video at this time to allow for discussion. To help in your discussion of how will we know students learn, let's review some things that we must do. We must vary our assessment methods. We must choose assessment methods that match the intended learning target. We have to design assessments that serve the intended purposes, sample learning appropriately in assessments, and write and ask assessment questions of all types. Before we go into our content builder, let's briefly review what we've learned so far. We know that we need to answer question 1, what do we want our students to learn? That is, what we want students to be able to do. Next, we consider the manner in which we will teach or assess the learning targets, that is, the tasks and assignments we give students to do. We know that the tasks and assignments we provide students to do must accurately assess the specified learning target. This is achieved by using our metacognitive process standards. Now let's put it all together. All right, let's review our content builder. We start off by addressing what we want our students to learn. We want our students to be able to make complex inferences and draw conclusions about the various structural patterns and features of literary nonfiction, and we want them to be able to respond by using textual evidence to support their understanding. So what do students need to do to access this learning? They need to be active readers. Those are our metacognitive process standards, figure 19. So students need to set a purpose for reading and for rereading. They need to ask literal, interpretive, and evaluative questions of text. Students need to be able to monitor and adjust their comprehension using fix-up strategies. That is, they must know what to do when the text becomes difficult. And also they need to be able to use context to clarify the meaning of unknown words. If students are having trouble with making these complex inferences, we need to scaffold and spiral in 5.7a, the student expectation, which is identify the literary language and devices used in literary nonfiction, including how authors present major events in a person's life. Once they're able to identify, then we can grow their learning into these complex inferences. Lastly, how can students demonstrate their learning? Figure 19D, make complex inferences about text. E, they should be able to summarize information in text, maintaining the meaning and its logical order. And F, make connections between and across multiple texts in various genres and provide textual evidence. Good teaching is all about decision making. Before we go to the PLC for the Reading PLC document, let's take a moment to reflect on what it is going to take for students to learn at the depth of knowledge of the standard. Deconstructing your learning objective and thinking ahead about what we want our students to learn, we must think about what is it going to take to know that they learned. Now here I've deconstructed the learning objective for the knowledge and skill statement for literary nonfiction. I've written the learning targets in student-friendly language with I can statements, which are learning target statements. So thinking ahead, we think about what we want our students to be able to do. We think about the reasoning, that is, what patterns of reasoning will students need to master to be successful. We think about what skills they need to have in order to be successful. And we think about what products, if any, will students need to practice creating to be successful. You can pause the video at this time just to look how I've deconstructed this learning objective and addressed all of these areas. Once we know what our learning targets are and have defined how we are going to assess them, we're able to think clearly about what combination of instruction and experiences will prepare students both to know and to demonstrate their learning. This is often referred to as intentional teaching, where all instruction and classroom activities are aimed at specified learning targets. This is the purpose of the PLC for the Reading PLC document. We use the PLC for the Reading PLC document to plan. So for Unit 2A, we should select all different types of autobiographical writings as well as biography to have students read and practice. Within this unit, students should use all the levels of thinking provided as active readers. These should be explicitly taught if needed and modeled by the teacher first, and students are provided time for purposeful practice in order to make complex inferences and draw conclusions about the structural patterns and features of literary nonfiction. How will we know students learned? What will be our day-to-day evidences of learning? Here's the stop and think strategy. These are a list of things that students do when they are reading text. They can stop and ask questions and write their questions out, usually in an I wonder statement. They stop and visualize by drawing a picture. They stop and write out their connections. They note their reactions. They challenge the text. They recognize and analyze literary elements. They write summaries, or they can stop and refocus. First, here are some examples of text annotations. Notice how the student writes the genre. They turn their headings into questions. This student has chosen to identify topic sentences and main ideas, and on the other side she's writing her details and her responses. This student is using all of the skills. They're questioning what do words mean, they're writing quick summary statements, they're writing responses such that's a lot of noise, they're recognizing expert opinions, that's a type of detail. This student loves to draw pictures, so he's visualizing the text on one side and he's asking questions on the other. Here's how a student can spill their thinking onto a graphic organizer where they're recognizing the topic and main idea, they're pulling out important details, and then they're writing responses that could either be in the form of a reaction or question. And here's another graphic organizer. This one is for fiction, but they are really expounding on all of the elements of fiction that you wrote down. Your wonder.
Well, I kind of like this one.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if they try to vote?
Did you find the answer to that question?
Oh yeah, and did woman gets a vote? No, I haven't got the answer yet for that one.
Oh, so you're wondering, did women get to vote too?
Because it said only men could vote.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll be back for your discussion.
As soon as she came near, all the afflicted girls fell into fights. Has this woman hurt you?
I never saw these people person before.
Okay, so he's the witch. They say you bewitched your first husband to death. Oh, he's a girl.
If it please your worship, I know nothing of it.
She shook her head and afflicted were tortured. Why you seem to act witchcraft before use us by the motion of your body, which seems to have influence upon
We should search this word up so we would understand.
I know nothing of it. I am innocent to a witch. I know not what a witch is.
So we understand the meaning better, so let's search up that word.
What's it called?
Read your note up under there so you understand your source.
No.
Samuel Parrish was the minister of Salem Village.
Harris's 9-year-old daughter, Betty, had earlier made charges of witchcraft against the family's slave, Tituba.
So Bridget is the girl, and she killed. The examiner thinks that she killed her husband. Because now they think that she's a witch, probably that she's been witched. So let's search up the word afflicted to see what it means.
So you want to look for afflict. What's your document?
It's about the people that got accused and accusers.
So
What about them?
for
Their ages and how many of them, their ages and were they married, single, or widow.
Okay.
And it says,
So y'all having to make a generalization.
yes.
Okay, what's your consensus on number one?
I put, for my generalization, I don't know how to say that. I put that more females were accused than men were.
What's your evidence for that? You see your evidence?
Oh, yes. It says, because 110 females died, and then just 24 men had died.
Okay, good. What about the marital status? Continue to make all your generalizations. Are you the scribe? Are you writing it down?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I appreciate you participating in the PLC curriculum preview with me today. When you plan on implementing the Stop and Think strategy, please invite me in, as I would love to see classroom implementation. Or if you would like for me to come in and do a model lesson, I'd love to do that as well. If you have suggestions for future curriculum previews, please submit ideas to felicia.wilkerson@crowley.k12.tx.us. Also, I would like to hear from you if you have an instructional strategy that you would like to showcase in upcoming videos. Finally, please be sure to submit a copy of the PLC for the Reading PLC document to the appropriate campus designee. Finally, please be sure to submit a copy of the PLC for the Reading PLC document to the appropriate campus designee. Until next time, goodbye.